They call it empowerment to be loud, bold, and unbound, but empowerment without purpose is like a flame without warmth, bright yet burning. The question isn't whether Islam allows women to be free. The real question is what kind of freedom truly fulfills the soul. When we talk about feminism and Islam, we are not just discussing movements or ideologies, we are discussing two visions of womanhood, one shaped by the temporary trends of society, and the other by the eternal wisdom of the Creator. The modern feminist movement arose from pain, from centuries of women being denied their rights, silenced, and confined by unjust systems that misused religion, culture, and power. So when women began to demand equality, it was not rebellion, it was a cry for recognition, for justice, for dignity. Yet somewhere along the way, that cry transformed. It shifted from seeking justice to seeking sameness, from asking for balance to demanding control. The modern definition of empowerment became linked with independence from men, independence from family, and ultimately independence from God. But can a soul truly be free when it severs its connection with its Creator? Can a woman truly rise if she must step away from the one who gave her worth before the world ever recognized it? Islam answers with a gentle but powerful truth. You do not need to become like a man to be equal in worth. You do not need to reject faith to claim freedom. You are already honored, already seen, already elevated, not by society's approval, but by Allah's love. Islam's foundation of gender justice is not rooted in competition, but in cooperation. It does not pit man against woman. It aligns both toward a shared purpose, to serve God, to uplift creation, and to establish mercy on earth. In the Quran, Allah describes men and women as allies of one another, protectors and supporters, not rivals. This sacred partnership dismantles the narrative that empowerment requires rebellion. Instead, Islam redefines empowerment as submission, not submission to oppression. Submission to the one who frees you from all oppression. Submission in Islam is not weakness, it is strength refined by humility. It means trusting that Allah's laws are not meant to confine, but to protect, not to silence, but to dignify. When Islam asks a woman to dress modestly, it is not to erase her beauty, but to free her from being reduced to it. When Islam defines her rights and duties, it is not to limit her potential, but to harmonize her spiritual and worldly success. The modern world often misunderstands this balance, interpreting divine guidance as patriarchy and divine protection as control. But when a woman truly understands her value in Islam, she realizes she does not need to chase validation. She carries it within her soul, anchored in divine purpose. Modern feminism speaks of breaking chains. Islam teaches that some chains are illusions. The real chains are not external, they are internal. They are the chains of comparison, of insecurity, of the endless pressure to prove worth through worldly measures. Islam liberates by shifting that lens, by reminding every woman that her worth was never determined by her role, her looks, or her success in a man-made system. Her worth is tied to her faith, her sincerity, her character. A believing woman in Islam is not defined by how loudly she can speak, but by how truthfully she can lie. True strength is not in overpowering others, but in mastering oneself. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said that the strong person is not the one who can overpower others in battle, but the one who controls themselves when angry. That teaching applies to every aspect of life. Real empowerment is spiritual discipline. In Islam, a woman's journey is not toward better than a man, but toward being the best version of herself. She stands before her Lord alone, judged not by her gender, but by her deeds. When modern feminism teaches that freedom means having no boundaries, Islam teaches that real freedom is found in knowing which boundaries protect the soul and which destroy it. So, can Islam and modern feminism be compatible? The answer depends on which feminism we are speaking of. If feminism means justice, dignity, and the end of oppression, Islam was there before any movement began. If feminism means the right to learn, to work, to speak, and to be treated with respect, Islam not only supports it, but commanded it. If feminism means rejecting divine wisdom, denying biological and spiritual balance, and replacing morality with ego, then that path no longer aligns with Islam's vision of liberation. The difference between the two lies in their foundation. One begins with human experience and evolves through culture. The other begins with divine truth and remains timeless. Islam does not change with trends because it was never meant to conform, it was meant to guide. Modern feminism, though powerful in exposing social injustices, often forgets that not all authority is oppression and not all obedience is submission to man. Sometimes obedience is an act of love toward God. Islam's message to the modern woman is not to silence her voice, but to purify her intention, not to take away her freedom, but to give it direction. The woman of faith walks this earth with grace, not because society defines her worth, but because her creator already did. And in that realization, she finds the truest form of empowerment the world could never offer. When we begin to explore the question of whether modern feminism and Islam are compatible, we must first recognize that both emerged from deeply different foundations and worldviews, even though they appear to address similar concerns about justice, equality, and the role of women in society. Modern feminism arose as a response to oppression, a movement born out of pain, frustration, and centuries of patriarchal injustice that denied women their basic rights to education, work, choice, and respect. It was a rebellion against systems that saw women as lesser beings, confined them to silence, and used social and even religious excuses to justify inequality. Islam, on the other hand, did not emerge as a reaction to oppression. It came as a divine revelation, not from human anger or suffering, from the wisdom of the Creator who already knew the dignity of both men and women. Islam did not need a feminist movement because it began with the truth that both genders are equal in the eyes of Allah, that both are honored and responsible before Him, and that neither can rise above the other in worth except through righteousness. Long before any wave of feminism appeared, Islam gave women the right to own property, to inherit wealth, to choose their spouses, to seek knowledge, to express their opinions, and to participate in social and political life. The Prophet's own example showed this balance in action. He consulted women, honored their intellect, and treated them with mercy and respect. Therefore, while modern feminism seeks to correct man-made injustice, Islam offers a framework that already removed it, not by revolting against men, but by restoring divine balance. However, the confusion arises because people often mistake the cultural practices of Muslims for the principles of Islam. The oppression, silencing, and misuse of women in some Muslim societies do not represent Islam. They represent the absence of it. When Islam's teachings are ignored or distorted by culture or power, the very justice and compassion it was meant to bring become buried under layers of human error. That is when people look toward feminism, hoping to reclaim what Islam had already guaranteed. But in this attempt, some women unknowingly replace one imbalance with another, exchanging spiritual wholeness for worldly independence and trading divine guidance for self-defined liberty. Modern feminism often defines empowerment through the lens of autonomy, the idea that one must be free from all forms of authority, even divine authority, to be truly liberated. But Islam defines empowerment through purpose. The understanding that real freedom is not found in rejecting all limits, in submitting to the one who sets them with wisdom and mercy. The feminist movement seeks to free the body. Islam seeks to free the soul. Feminism focuses on external structures. Islam transforms the internal self. When these two paths cross, compatibility depends on which foundation is prioritized, human desire or divine command. Islam never denied women the right to speak, lead, or dream. It only directed those rights toward higher values, where every act of strength is an act of worship and every success an expression of gratitude. In the pursuit of equality, modern feminism sometimes mistakes sameness for fairness. It teaches that men and women must be identical to be equal, that equality means dissolving gender differences. Islam teaches that equality does not mean sameness, it means justice. Men and women are different by design, physically, emotionally, and socially, yet their worth before Allah is identical in value and potential. Each has been created with strengths that complement the other, not compete with it. Islam does not raise one by lowering the other, it balances them through divine harmony. A woman's strength in Islam is not measured by how much she resembles a man, but by how deeply she embodies her God-given nature with dignity and purpose. The Quran does not define women as oppressed victims or fragile beings. It defines them as partners in building a moral and compassionate world. But when modern ideologies erase the sacred distinction between genders, they create confusion, leading women to believe that empowerment requires abandoning motherhood, modesty, or family roles as if those were chains instead of choices. Islam protects a woman's right to be educated, independent, and successful while reminding her that true success is not defined by societal validation but by divine satisfaction. When a woman serves her family, contributes to her community, or pursues her education, she is not serving patriarchy. She is serving God. Her actions, guided by intention, become worship. In that realization, she discovers that her worth was never tied to comparison but to contribution. To understand compatibility between Islam and feminism, We must separate Islam from the behavior of Muslims and feminism from its political waves. There is a form of feminism that seeks justice, defends dignity, and fights oppression. This aligns with Islam because justice is at the heart of the faith. But there is also a form that rejects divine authority, promotes moral relativism, and defines freedom as rebellion against religion. This form contradicts Islam's essence. Islam does not support the idea that liberation means doing whatever one desires. Rather, it teaches that liberation is knowing who you truly are before your creator and living with that awareness. Modern feminism may seek to empower women through self-assertion. Islam empowers them through self-knowledge. It teaches that the most liberated person is the one who is not enslaved by trends, desires, or people's opinions. The feminist world often praises loudness as strength, but Islam teaches that quiet dignity can be far more powerful. Feminism often calls for women to take back power, while Islam calls for women to recognize that they already possess it, not power over others, power within themselves, the power of faith, resilience, and wisdom. In essence, Islam's relationship with feminism is not one of rejection, but of redefinition. Islam redefines empowerment, equality, and freedom in the language of faith, not ego. It redefines strength as patience, power as humility, and freedom as devotion. When a woman lives by Islam's principles, she does not need to march for her worth, she walks with it. Her strength lies not in imitating men, but in embodying divine values that even the strongest cannot match. Islam's vision of womanhood is not confined to time, culture, or ideology. It is timeless, sacred, and complete. The modern world may offer changing versions of feminism. Islam offers a truth that never changes, that both men and women were created not to dominate each other, but to help each other reach their highest selves. And in that sacred partnership, every woman finds her true liberation, not in breaking away from God's command, but in walking closer to it until her heart is free, not because she defied the rules, but because she finally understood their purpose. When we try to understand whether modern feminism and Islam can walk side by side, we need to go beyond slogans and emotional arguments and instead enter the realm of spiritual clarity and divine wisdom. Modern feminism, though rooted in noble intentions, is a movement shaped by human experience and human pain. It arose in societies where women were genuinely oppressed, silenced, and stripped of their basic dignity. Feminism gave voice to the voiceless and sought to correct centuries of injustice. But like all human ideologies, it carries both truth and error. It was born out of rebellion, but Islam was born out of revelation. Feminism fights against patriarchy. Islam removes it entirely by establishing divine authority instead of human dominance. Islam's foundation is not a reaction to male oppression. It is the divine balance between man and woman, both honored as spiritual equals, yet designed with unique roles that reflect the wisdom of the Creator. While feminism says, we want freedom from men, Islam says, you already have freedom through Allah. The problem is that modern feminism defines empowerment through independence. Independence from systems, from social expectations, and even from faith. But Islam defines empowerment through purpose and alignment with divine truth. True liberation in Islam is not the ability to do whatever you wish, but the strength to choose what pleases Allah. Feminism calls for a woman to own her voice. Islam calls for her to use her voice for justice and goodness. Feminism demands recognition from the world. Islam reminds her that she has already been recognized by the Lord of the worlds. Islam gave women the right to learn, to inherit, to choose, to speak, to lead, but it also gave her something the world still struggles to offer: peace within herself. For while feminism can free a woman's body, only Islam can free her soul. In today's world, where identities are constantly shifting and values are being rewritten, the idea of womanhood has been stretched, distorted, and sometimes even erased. Modern feminism often argues that in order for women to be equal, they must be the same as men, that equality is measured by sameness in role, lifestyle, and authority. But Islam teaches a deeper truth. Equality is not sameness. Equality is justice. Men and women are two halves of a whole, each designed to complement, not compete with the other. Their differences are not flaws. They are divine designs, each carrying strengths that complete humanity's moral, emotional, and spiritual balance. When feminism tries to erase these differences, it unintentionally creates a world where women feel pressured to mirror men to be considered successful, valuable, or strong. Islam celebrates her distinct strength, her mercy, her emotional intelligence, her resilience, and her nurturing spirit as sacred forms of power. The world teaches women to prove their worth. Islam tells them they are already worthy. In the Quran, Allah addresses both men and women equally when he says, I will not let the work of any among you, male or female, go to waste. This verse reveals a profound truth that divine justice does not compare roles. It rewards intentions. A woman serving her family with sincerity, pursuing knowledge with humility, standing for truth with courage. Each act is valued equally before Allah. Modern feminism may empower women to demand their rights. Islam empowers them to fulfill their purpose. The first speaks of worldly recognition. The second leads to eternal honor. True empowerment is not found in shouting louder than men or defying religious principles to feel liberated. It is found in walking the path of truth with quiet strength, faith, and grace. In that light, Islam is not a cage that confines a woman, but a sanctuary that protects her from becoming lost in a world that measures value only by visibility, power, or appearance. Islam's message is timeless. You are not powerful because you compete with men, but because you stand beside them, guided by faith, bound by dignity, and anchored in divine purpose. When the conversation turns to whether modern feminism and Islam can coexist, what we are really exploring is the tension between two different visions of freedom, one built on self-definition and the other on divine direction. Modern feminism teaches that the path to empowerment lies in autonomy, to live without depending on anyone, to answer to no authority but oneself, and to determine one's own truth. This message sounds liberating on the surface, especially to those who have been wronged or silenced. Beneath it lies a subtle illusion. It assumes that freedom means the absence of all boundaries. Yet Islam teaches that not all boundaries are prisons. Some are protection. The difference between these two worldviews lies in their source. One is constructed by human reasoning, which changes with culture and time, while the other is rooted in divine wisdom, which transcends both. Islam honors a woman not because of her independence from others, because of her connection to her creator. Her dignity does not rely on rebellion, it rests on balance. She is neither defined by submission to men nor by rejection of them. She is defined by her servitude to Allah alone. The feminist movement often equates submission with weakness, but in Islam, submission to God is the highest form of strength. It means having the courage to align your desires with truth, to choose faith over ego, and to walk a path that might be misunderstood by the world, but is honored by heaven. Modern feminism often defines empowerment by visibility, by how loudly a woman can speak, how far she can rise, or how much she can prove herself in a male-dominated world. But Islam redefines empowerment as inner strength, the quiet, unshakable power of a heart at peace with its purpose. The Quran speaks of Maryam, peace be upon her, not as a woman of status or public influence, as a woman of purity, patience, and devotion. Her story shows that true greatness is not measured by public recognition, but by spiritual elevation. Islam does not forbid women from pursuing knowledge, leadership, or success. It simply reminds them that these pursuits have no meaning if disconnected from the remembrance of Allah. The world teaches women to seek validation from society through beauty, work, or achievements, but Islam teaches them to seek fulfillment from their Creator, who values sincerity more than success. A woman in Islam does not need to chase worth. She carries it inherently because Allah honored her in creation. When a woman wears her faith with conviction, when she guards her modesty, when she speaks with wisdom, she is not oppressed, she is empowered in the truest sense, because her worth is no longer for the world to define or diminish. Feminism says, I own my body. Islam says, your body is sacred, entrusted to you by Allah. Feminism says, I speak for myself. Islam says, let your voice be a source of truth, not pride. Feminism says, I decide who I am. Islam says, you are who Allah created you to be. And that is already enough. When we compare these two ideologies, we find that the overlap between them exists only in the shared desire for justice. But their destinations differ. Feminism aims to give power to women in relation to men, while Islam gives women power in relation to God. Feminism seeks to elevate women by making them like men, while Islam elevates both by reminding them of their divine purpose. Feminism often views religion as an obstacle to freedom, yet Islam reveals that the truest freedom lies within faith. The feminist word often looks at Muslim women who wear hijab or embrace modesty and assumes they are oppressed. But the irony is that these women often feel freer than those who dress and live to please others. Their freedom is inward. It is the freedom from the gaze of others, from the pressure to conform, from the exhausting need to prove worth through appearance or social approval. This is what the modern world has forgotten, that empowerment is not found in becoming louder, but in becoming truer. Islam gives women rights, but more than that, it gives them purpose. It tells them that their identity is not confined to a movement, a title, or a cause. It is an act of worship, a reflection of divine will. The woman of Islam walks through this world with grace because she knows who she belongs to. She is unshaken by trends, unmoved by criticism, and unconfused by shifting standards because her value was written by the one who never changes. And in that unwavering truth lies the answer. Islam and modern feminism are only compatible when feminism remembers that equality without faith is incomplete, and empowerment without God is empty. Islam does not need to adjust to modern ideologies. It has already perfected what every heart is searching for, a freedom that liberates not just the body, but the soul. The discussion about whether modern feminism and Islam can align is one that demands depth, not emotion, because it touches not just the politics of gender, but the philosophy of existence itself. Modern feminism emerged from an environment where religion was often used as a tool of control, where women were marginalized and their voices muted by male-dominated structures. As a result, feminism saw religion, tradition, and authority as enemies of liberation. It sought to reclaim the voice that had been taken away, yet Islam never silenced that voice. It sanctified it. The difference lies in perspective. Modern feminism believes a woman must fight to earn her rights, while Islam declares she was born with them. Before any political movement ever chanted about equality, the Quran already revealed it that men and women were created from a single soul, equal in spiritual worth, distinct only by piety. Islam did not need a revolution to empower women. It revealed empowerment as a divine inheritance. But over centuries, cultural distortions and ignorance blurred that truth, leading some Muslims to treat women unjustly and others to assume Islam was the cause. In response, many turned toward modern feminism as a cure, not realizing that they were trying to fix a problem created by human failure with a philosophy built on rejecting divine order. Islam does not fear empowerment, it defines it. It does not diminish women, it elevates them. But it elevates them through purpose, not pride. In Islam, dignity is not achieved through defiance, but through devotion. The modern feminist ideal promotes a version of freedom that is constantly shifting. Freedom from patriarchy, from cultural norms, increasingly freedom from any divine structure. But freedom without direction is chaos disguised as progress. When feminism detached itself from faith, it replaced divine accountability with human desire, and in doing so, lost the balance that keeps empowerment meaningful. Islam's understanding of freedom is rooted in the soul, not the ego. It teaches that real freedom is the ability to live by truth, even when the world disagrees. Modern feminism often tells women that empowerment means doing whatever pleases them. Islam teaches that true empowerment is doing what pleases Allah. One path leads to momentary satisfaction, the other to eternal peace. When a woman submits to Allah, she is not surrendering her independence. She is reclaiming her peace. She no longer chases validation from a world that keeps changing its definitions of success and beauty. Instead, she becomes anchored in something timeless, unshakable, divine. Islam does not expect women to hide their strength. It simply teaches them to channel it with wisdom. The Prophet's life is filled with examples of strong, articulate, courageous women, scholars, businesswomen, warriors, mothers, and leaders, each one powerful, yet profoundly humble. Their greatness did not come from fighting men. It came from walking beside them, serving a higher purpose. Modern feminism may celebrate the self. Islam celebrates the soul. The difference is subtle but transformative. One feeds the ego, the other nourishes the heart. Modern feminism, in its later waves, has begun to question even the nature of womanhood itself. What started as a movement to give women a voice has evolved into one that blurs the very boundaries that define womanhood. This confusion is not progress, it is the loss of identity. Islam, however, guards that identity with sacred clarity. It recognizes the woman as unique, honored, and irreplaceable in her essence. Her femininity is not a limitation, it is a divine signature. Feminism says equality means sameness, but Islam says equality means value. Two entities can be equal without being identical, just as the sun and the moon both illuminate the sky, yet do so differently. Modern ideologies often push women to emulate men to prove their worth, but Islam reminds her that she was never created to be a copy, she was created to be a complement. The Prophet described women as the twin halves of men, not lesser, not greater, but essential. This understanding protects balance, not competition. The feminist approach that denies or diminishes gender differences ultimately robs women of their sacred individuality. Islam, on the other hand, embraces those differences as divine harmony. It offers women the strength to lead and the softness to nurture, the right to voice and the right to peace. The woman of faith stands tall not because she rejects her role, but because she embraces it with understanding. Her worth is not measured by imitation, but by intention, and her success not by visibility, but by virtue. When viewed through the lens of divine truth, the compatibility between Islam and modern feminism becomes clear. They intersect only at justice, then part ways at purpose. Islam's goal is not merely to uplift women socially, but to elevate all of humanity spiritually. Modern feminism, in its current form, can raise awareness but cannot heal the soul because it fights for equality without acknowledging the Creator who defines it. Islam, on the other hand, brings justice with compassion, balance with mercy, and rights with responsibility. It does not create enemies between genders, but harmony between hearts. It does not command women to compete with men, but to cooperate in goodness. The modern world tells women they must fight to be seen. Islam tells them they were never unseen. The world tells them to find power in rebellion. Islam tells them the truest power is in submission to the one who never oppresses. The world changes its standards of beauty, worth, and strength every generation. Islam's standards remain eternal. The modern woman who grounds herself in faith is not backward. She is wise. She understands that empowerment without morality becomes emptiness dressed in pride. She walks the world with dignity, knowing she does not belong to any movement, ideology, or label. She belongs to the one who created her. That realization is her liberation. And when she lives with that truth, she becomes unshakable, not because she is louder than others, but because she stands on the foundation of divine truth, a truth that neither time nor ideology can ever erase.